The road kept getting narrower until the trees pressed in so tightly I could hear their branches dragging along the side of the SUV. My head throbbed with every bump, my body barely more than skin stretched thin over bone. Marcus said we were almost there, but I stopped believing him 20 miles ago. Helena, he said gently, glancing at me, try to rest. You'll feel better once we're at the cabin. I didn't reply. I couldn't. The morphine dulled the pain, but not the awareness. I knew something was wrong. I had known for weeks, maybe months, but I didn't have the strength to name it. 3 years ago, I was at the top of my game. Founder and CEO of a growing translation agency. Fluent in 5 languages. Running workshops in Vienna, Tokyo, Montreal. Then came the diagnosis, stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. Marcus held my hand through the first rounds of chemo. He rubbed my back when I vomited up blood. He told me, "You're the strongest person I know," and I believed him. But something shifted. At first it was subtle. The tired smiles, the distant eyes, then the gym memberships, the long hours, the perfume on his shirts that wasn't mine. I told myself he was coping in his own way. I was too busy fighting for my life to fight for my marriage too. When he suggested we leave the city and try an alternative treatment in the wilderness, some reclusive healer in Montana, I said yes. Because I was desperate. Because hope, no matter how thin, still flickered inside me. Because when someone you love offers a miracle, you want to believe it's for you, not for their convenience. The tires crunched to a stop in a clearing surrounded by towering pine and larch. A one-room log cabin sat hunched in the middle, its roof sagging, windows shuttered. I stared at it from the passenger seat, my heart sinking. This is it. I asked, my voice no louder than a whisper. Marcus nodded, already out of the car and unloading a duffel bag. It's rustic, I know, but it's isolated, peaceful. The air is clean, and the healer, he'll find us. That's how he works. I wanted to ask for his name, for proof, but my tongue felt thick and my ribs ached with each breath. I let him help me out of the car, let him carry me inside and settle me onto a cot near the fireplace. The place smelled of mildew and old firewood. No power, no running water, just 4 walls, a stove, and a silence that pressed against my skull like a vice. Still, I said nothing. I nodded when he tucked a blanket around me. I even thanked him, because when you're that close to the edge, kindness, no matter how hollow, feels like something to hold on to. That night, I lay awake listening to the wind scrape against the cabin. Marcus slept beside me on a mattress, snoring softly, his back turned. I stared at the wooden beams above me and tried to imagine the healer. What would he look like? Would he chant? Use herbs? Was it even a man? Or was there no one coming at all? I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember waking up. The cold hit me first, sharp and sudden. The cabin door was slightly ajar. A draft crept in like fingers. I tried to call Marcus, but my voice cracked. No answer. I reached for the water bottle beside the cot, empty. Panic bloomed in my chest. I forced myself to sit up, every movement agony. The duffel bag he'd unpacked was gone. So were his shoes, his jacket, my medication. I dragged myself to the window, each step like walking through broken glass. Outside, only tire tracks in the mud. No car, no Marcus. He left me. He really left me here, to die. I sank to the floor, the realization louder than any scream. My body folded in on itself like a broken bird. I didn't cry. I couldn't. There wasn't enough left in me for tears. Only breath. And even that was starting to feel optional. I don't know how long I lay there. Maybe hours. Maybe a day. Time loses meaning when your body is shutting down. But eventually, the thirst clawed its way through the fog. There was a sound faint like a stream. I remembered it from the night before. Water. I had to try. Crawling was all I could manage. The cabin floor was rough under my knees. My palms scraped against splinters. The door was heavier than I remembered, and opening it felt like lifting a tombstone. Outside, the world blurred, reds, browns, golds. The forest blazed with autumn, as if mocking my decay. I followed the sound, inch by inch, my vision pulsing in and out like a faulty camera lens. Then everything tilted. I collapsed onto the pine needles, my cheek pressed against the cold earth. There was movement somewhere in the trees. Heavy, deliberate. Not a deer. Not a bear. A voice, low and steady, cut through the dark. "Hey, are you alive?" My lips parted, but no words came. I thought it was a hallucination. The fever had done that before, given me voices, lights, false hopes. But then I felt arms, strong, calloused, lifting me gently. "Easy. I've got you." I saw a face. A man. Bearded, weathered. Eyes the color of storm clouds. Behind him, a massive wolf-like dog stood silently watching me. Then everything went black. And the last thing I remember was the warmth of a wool coat and the sound of boots crunching through leaves. That was the moment I stopped dying. That was the moment my real story began. I woke to the smell of firewood and pine. Not the synthetic pine scent they put in candles. Real pine. Damp. Earthy. Alive. My head was pounding, and my throat felt like it had been scrubbed raw. But for the first time in days, the pain wasn't all-consuming. I blinked against the light. I wasn't in the cabin. This was a different place. Smaller, neater. A cast-iron stove crackled near the wall, and shelves lined with jars and herbs framed the room like something out of a forest healer's fairy tale. A heavy wool blanket covered me up to the chin. My skin was slick with sweat, and I could still feel the cold in my bones, but I wasn't shaking anymore. He was there, the man with the beard and the storm-colored eyes. He sat by the fire, stirring something in a pot. He turned when he heard me shift. "You're awake," he said, his voice low but gentle. "Good. I wasn't sure you'd make it through the night." I tried to speak, but my throat cracked open like dry paper. He got up quickly and brought over a tin cup. The liquid was warm and bitter, but I drank it greedily. Only after I'd finished half of it did I realize he was holding the cup steady with both hands, like he'd done this before, like he was used to caring for someone fragile. "What is this?" I rasped. "Chug a tea," he replied. "Good for the immune system. Doesn't taste like much, but it works." His dog, or wolf, lay curled by the door, unmoving but alert. Its eyes tracked every motion I made, not with threat, but with watchfulness. It felt strangely comforting. "I'm Elias," he said. "I live about a mile from where I found you." Fenrir, he nodded toward the animal, was the one who heard something and wouldn't let up. "Lucky for you, I listened to him." I managed a nod, then rested my head back. The room spun a little, but I could feel the fever breaking, my body loosening its grip on the edge. "Do you remember what happened?" he asked softly. I closed my eyes. "My husband," I whispered. "He left me there. Said we were going to see a healer, but he left. Took everything. My meds. Food. Phone. Gone." Elias didn't say anything right away. When I opened my eyes again, his jaw was tight, and his hand clenched the arm of the chair. "He left you to die," he said quietly. I didn't reply. I didn't have to. For days, I drifted in and out of consciousness. Elias never left me for long. He gave me sips of broth, kept the fire going, checked my temperature with the back of his hand like someone who had done this before. Sometimes I'd wake to him reading softly. Books I didn't recognize, poetry mostly, or old field journals full of plant sketches and annotations in looping script. The pain was still there, but it no longer felt cruel. It felt like something I was moving through, instead of being consumed by. He didn't ask questions, not at first, and when I had enough strength to speak more than a few words, I told him everything. About Marcus, about Elise, about the way cancer had slowly peeled my life away layer by layer, career, energy, dignity, and how I tried to pretend it wasn't happening. How I gave Marcus the benefit of the doubt, even when he stopped looking me in the eye. Elias listened, not with pity, but with something closer to grief. Like he recognized the taste of betrayal. He shared his story too. A biologist once, specialized in medicinal plants, built a research lab with his best friend, a man he'd known since college. Together, they chased cures no one believed in. They were close to something big, something that could change how we treat autoimmune diseases. But then the friend patented it under his own name, erased Elias from the record, and accused him of fraud. The lawsuits buried him. His wife left. His reputation was shredded. And when he came to this forest, he came to die. But I didn't, he said, staring into the fire. I found Fenrir instead. Or he found me. And I realized if this damn dog wasn't giving up, maybe I didn't have to either. I looked at Elias differently after that. He wasn't just a recluse in a cabin. He was someone who had been dragged through the fire and emerged changed. Not untouched. Not whole. But real. That night, as wind howled through the trees and the fire flickered low, he sat beside my cot and read to me from an old, worn journal filled with his own notes. Formulas, recipes, sketches of roots and leaves. "You have a gift," I whispered. He shrugged. "No one wants nature anymore. They want pills with labels and quick results." "Not everyone," I said. "Not me." We sat in silence for a while. Fenrir snored softly by the door. "I don't think I can ever go back," I whispered. Elias looked at me. "Then don't. Heal first. The rest will come." And I believed him, not because he promised a miracle, but because, for the first time in years, someone didn't see me as broken. He saw me as someone still becoming. The days passed in a rhythm I'd never known before. Quiet, deliberate, almost sacred. There were no schedules, no devices blinking with notifications, no noise pressing in from all sides. Just firelight, wind through the trees, the scent of pine and smoke clinging to my skin. And Elias, always nearby, moving with the kind of stillness that comes only from someone who's already known the worst and survived it. My body began to return to me, slowly. Not as it was, but piece by piece. My breath no longer came in shallow rasps. My hands stopped trembling when I held the tin cup of tea. My mind, once fogged by pain and fear, began to clear, enough to recognize that what I'd found here was not just safety. It was shelter for something deeper than flesh and bone. One afternoon, while Fenrir dozed under the table and sunlight spilled across the worn floorboards, I sat propped on a pile of blankets and listened as Elias talked about lichens. "They're not one organism, you know," he said, stirring the herbs he'd been drying. "They're actually two, fungus and algae, living together. They rely on each other. One gives structure, the other makes food." I smiled faintly. A codependent mess. Sounds familiar. He chuckled. "Maybe. But also, they thrive in places nothing else survives. Cling to rocks, trees, old ruins. They're tougher than they look." I turned my face toward the window. Outside, the wind picked up a few golden leaves and danced them past the glass. "I used to think strength meant pushing through," I murmured. "Pretending you're fine. Smiling at clients while your hands shake. Laughing at jokes while your body fails." "And now," he asked, "now I think it's choosing to stay soft, even when life gives you every reason to harden." He didn't respond right away, just watched me with that quiet, steady gaze that never felt invasive, just present. That evening, as I managed to walk a few steps toward the porch with his help, we paused to rest on the threshold. The sky was washed in pink and silver, and the forest stretched out before us like a secret waiting to be kept. "You ever think about going back?" I asked, staring at the horizon. "To what?" "To the world, the people, the work." Elias's jaw tightened. He rubbed his hands together, rough palms against rougher knuckles. "I did once," he said, "but when everything was taken from me, I realized the only thing I ever truly owned was silence. This place, it doesn't lie to you." I nodded. But people still need what you know. Your research. Your mind. He turned toward me then, slowly, as if unsure what he'd find. And you, he asked, what do you need? I opened my mouth to answer, then stopped. Because I didn't know anymore. I didn't need Marcus. I didn't need the business or the apartment in the city. I didn't even need to be the person I used to be, the ambitious, polished version of myself who'd collected languages and accolades like armor. I needed to feel like I had a place in the world again, a place not built on sacrifice, but on choice. The next morning, I sat at the wooden table flipping through one of Elias's notebooks. The pages were worn, some nearly falling out, but they were filled with the most intricate notes I'd ever seen. Latin names scrawled in perfect handwriting, diagrams of roots, cell structures, chemical breakdowns of infusions. These should be published, I said, running my finger along a line he'd written in ink that had bled slightly in the damp. Regeneration observed in sustained use of fireweed extract. Neural response improved. He didn't answer, just kept feeding wood into the stove. I'm serious, Elias. This is more than field work. This could save lives. He looked over his shoulder, eyes unreadable. No journal's going to publish something from a disgraced researcher living in the woods. Then we don't go to journals, I said simply. We write our own. Self-publish. Build something real. His expression shifted, just barely. I saw something flicker behind the walls. Fear, hope, both at once. You'd help me do that, he asked, voice low. I nodded. You saved my life. I want to help you give something back to the world. He didn't speak again, but I watched his shoulders drop just a little, as if the idea wasn't so impossible after all. As the leaves turned from gold to ash and the nights grew colder, I grew stronger. One morning, I stepped outside on my own, no arm to hold. Fenrir padded beside me like a silent guardian, his nose pressed into the wind. We followed the path Elias had carved between the trees, down toward the small creek that wound like a silver ribbon through the moss. I sat on a fallen log and let the sun hit my face. I was still sick, still fighting, but I was no longer afraid of the silence. That day, I told Elias I wanted to go back. Not to Marcus, not to my old life, to the truth, to face what was taken from me, I said, wrapping the blanket tighter around my shoulders, and to take it back. He didn't try to stop me, didn't ask when I'd leave. He just stood beside me in the falling light and nodded once. And though he said nothing, I could feel the weight of it in the way his hand brushed mine as we walked back, like a promise that neither of us wanted to speak aloud just yet. I didn't cry when I left the cabin. I thought I might, but the truth is, I felt ready. The kind of ready that comes after being emptied out, scraped raw, and slowly filled with something new. I left just after dawn, wrapped in Elias's old flannel, Fenrir following me down the narrow path to the trailhead. The hunter from the nearby village, Bill, a friend of Elias's, had agreed to give me a ride as far as Missoula, where I could catch a bus back to Minneapolis. Elias stood by the porch, his arms crossed, jaw tight. We hadn't said much that morning. We didn't need to. I'll find you, I said as I climbed into the truck. As soon as it's done. He nodded. I know. And then he said something I didn't expect. Don't be gentle. It took me a second to understand. He meant with Marcus. Missoula blurred into highways, and highways blurred into cities. The world felt louder than I remembered, everything too bright, too sharp. I hadn't seen myself in a mirror in nearly 3 months, and when I caught a glimpse in the reflection of the bus window, I barely recognized the woman looking back. Paler, thinner, but not hollow. I carried the wilderness with me now. Back in the city, I didn't go home. I couldn't. I had no keys, no phone, no money. Marcus had cut me off from everything the day he drove me into the woods. So instead, I went to the one place I hoped hadn't changed. Anna, my oldest friend, roommate from college, the only person who had ever seen me break down and not flinch. When she opened the door to her apartment and saw me standing there, gaunt, sunburned, wrapped in wool and flannel, she froze. Her mouth opened. No sound came. "Helena," she whispered. "Oh my God." We all thought I collapsed into her arms. Later, with warm soup in my hands and tears on both our faces, I told her everything. And when I showed her the forged death certificate I'd retrieved from the hospital records, procured by a lawyer Elias had quietly helped me contact, she went pale. "Marcus is going to burn for this," she said. And I believed her. We hired a team of legal experts. Quiet but ruthless. I wanted everything done by the book. I wanted no drama. Just truth. And justice. The case we built was damning. Marcus had forged a death certificate, withdrawn every cent from our joint accounts, sold off our lake house, held a memorial service, complete with heartfelt eulogies and crocodile tears, and then moved Elise into our home a week later. There were photos, videos, posts on social media that Elise, in all her arrogance, never thought to hide. One of them showed her wearing my old robe, holding a mug I'd bought on a trip to Prague. The same trip Marcus had claimed was too expensive back then. He told people I passed away peacefully in hospice care, that I'd given him my blessing to move on, that I was ready to let go of this life. But the only one ready to let go was him. When the subpoena arrived, Marcus showed up to court in a crisp navy suit, feigning shock and confusion. He called the whole thing a tragic misunderstanding. Claimed someone else must have filed the papers. Said he thought I was already gone when he left the cabin. He played the victim with such precision. I almost admired it, until I remembered the way he'd looked at me that morning in the forest. Not like a grieving husband, but like a man already unburdened. I testified calmly. I told the truth, every broken detail. And when I looked into his eyes, I didn't see guilt. I saw annoyance, fury, a man watching control slip through his fingers. The verdict came down quickly. 8 years for fraud, attempted murder, and financial exploitation. Elise got a suspended sentence in exchange for her cooperation. She never looked at me once in the courtroom, only at Marcus and only with disgust. When the bailiff began to lead him away, Marcus turned his head and hissed, "You should have died out there." I didn't flinch. Instead, I stood, straightened my shoulders, and said quietly so only he could hear, "I did. And now you get to live with what came back." That night, Anna and I sat on her tiny balcony under a string of dim fairy lights. She poured wine. I sipped ginger tea. "You did it," she said. I shook my head. "No, I survived it. That's different." The wind carried the scent of rain and city and something metallic I couldn't name. I missed the forest, the quiet, the weight of Fenrir's head on my knee, the scratch of Elias's pen in his notebooks, the soft rise and fall of breath in a cabin filled with wood smoke and healing. And that's when I knew. I wasn't done yet. It took me less than 3 days to finalize everything. The moment the settlement cleared and my name was legally restored to all the assets Marcus had tried to erase me from, I bought a small cabin on the edge of a conservation area just outside Bozeman, not in the heart of the city, not in some sanitized suburban cul-de-sac, but in a place where the trees still outnumbered the people, and the stars didn't have to compete with neon lights. I didn't decorate much. Just whitewashed walls, warm wood floors, and one large watercolor painting I'd commissioned from a local artist. A memory painted from the photograph I held in my mind. A frozen creek, the corner of a log cabin, and the silhouette of a man kneeling beside a wolf, firelight pouring from behind them. I hung it in the living room across from the window, where the sunrise could touch it first. The cabin wasn't just for me. It was for something more. A space to begin again. A space for him, if he wanted it. And so I returned. 5 months had passed since I'd stumbled out of those woods with barely enough strength to speak. 5 months of trials, of testimony, of bureaucracy, and papers and phone calls that never stopped ringing. 5 months of laying the dead parts of my life to rest. But through it all, I had never stopped hearing his voice. His quiet, steady voice reading by candlelight. his calloused hands checking my pulse, his footsteps pacing outside the cabin while I slept through fever and fire. I drove the same winding roads in a new SUV, packed with food, medicine, and all the courage I had left. I didn't know if he'd still be there. I didn't even know if he'd want to see me. But I had to try. When the forest finally parted and the clearing came into view, I stopped breathing. The cabin was still there. Smoke drifted gently from the chimney. The woodpile had been neatly res-tacked. And on the porch, a flash of gray fur and a low, rising howl. "Fenrir!" I whispered, tears blurring my vision as the giant beast bounded across the clearing toward me like a bullet of joy and muscle. He reached me before I could close the car door and nearly knocked me off my feet, whining and pressing his weight against my legs, licking the salt from my cheeks. I buried my hands in his thick fur, whispering, "I missed you too," over and over. Then I saw him. Elias stood at the edge of the porch, frozen, as if I were a ghost returning in the wrong season. He'd grown thinner. His beard was longer. His eyes still carried that same storm gray color, but now they were shaded with disbelief and something else I couldn't name. I took a step forward. "I came back," I said softly. He didn't move. I said I would. His lips parted, but no words came out. He looked like a man trying to speak through a dream. Finally, he descended the steps and walked toward me, stopping just close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his skin, the scent of cedar and wood smoke clinging to him like memory. "You're here," he said. I nodded. "And I'm not leaving unless you tell me to." He exhaled slowly. Then, without a word, he reached forward and touched my hand. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't even a full embrace. But it was enough. Later, as we sat beside the fire, Fenrir curled between us, the room lit only by amber light and our shared silence. I told him about the new cabin, the idea, the vision. "A healing center," I said. "Small, private. Just us. We don't need much." He didn't interrupt. "We'll use your research. Combine it with traditional care. We'll take the people medicine gave up on, the ones like me." He looked into the flames. "You really think people would trust someone like me again?" I turned to face him fully. "I don't think they'll have a choice once they see what you've done for me." His lips lifted, just barely, a crack in the ice. "I kept the journals," he said quietly, and I started adding more. Notes, recipes, observations. I smiled. "Then we start with that." Outside, the trees whispered as wind moved through them in long, low breaths. The forest had welcomed me back, not as a stranger this time, but as someone who belonged. That night, as I lay beneath a quilt older than memory, my head against Elias's shoulder, I let myself imagine what spring would look like here. The melt, the bloom, the sound of laughter between walls that once held only survival. I had been buried and I had grown back. Not the same, but better. The first patient arrived in late May. Her name was Clara, 42, diagnosed with late-stage lupus and dismissed by every specialist she'd seen in the city. Her eyes held that same haunted glaze I remembered in the mirror once, the silent question of, how much longer do I have to pretend I'm not afraid? We didn't pretend here. Clara stayed in the back guest house. Elias designed a regimen tailored to her needs. Herbs, warmth, stillness, quiet. I cooked her soups from recipes my grandmother had left scribbled in the margins of cookbooks. We didn't promise miracles, just presence, just care. By the third week, Clara had stopped checking the mirror for signs of dying. She started writing poetry again. We called our place the Thicket. It wasn't an official clinic. No signs out front. No ads. Just word of mouth and quiet referrals from hospice nurses who understood that sometimes healing isn't about beating the disease. It's about remembering you're still human while it tries to beat you. People came in silence. They stayed. They wept. And then they left, lighter, sometimes stronger, always changed. Elias rarely spoke to them directly at first. He watched from the garden, always near. But they began to seek him out, asking questions about roots and fungi and dreams. He started teaching again, just one-on-one. But I saw it, the light returning to him. I watched it return to me, too. Sometimes in the early mornings, I'd walk the perimeter of the woods alone, Fenrir pacing quietly behind me. The forest had its own way of speaking, the pine cones cracking underfoot, the birds that waited to sing until the first patch of sun kissed the earth. The ghosts that once haunted me here had faded into something gentler. I had forgiven Marcus, not because he deserved it, but because I no longer wanted to carry the weight of him inside my bones. One crisp morning in October, Elias and I stood beneath the cottonwoods, watching the leaves fall like slow, golden rain. My fingers brushed his, and he laced them through mine. "We never asked for this life," I said quietly. "No," he agreed, "but we chose it." That's the difference, isn't it? Life doesn't always give you what you want, but it always offers you something. A second breath, a quiet hour, a stranger who stays, or a place in the wilderness that somehow feels like home. People often ask me now why I didn't stay in the city, why I didn't take the settlement money and run, start fresh somewhere warm and anonymous. And I tell them this, because healing doesn't happen where it's safe. It happens where it's real. And I needed real. I needed the soil under my fingernails, the sound of wolves howling in the distance, the knowledge that somewhere out there I had survived something meant to kill me. Now, every evening, we light a single lantern in the front window of the thicket, not for advertising, not for decoration, but for anyone who might be walking the edge of their own darkness. It says there's still light here. There's still hope. And sometimes when I pass the mirror, I catch a glimpse of the woman I used to be, but only for a second, because that version of me died in the forest. The one who stands here now, she's something else entirely.